The dress didn't fit right, and everyone in the room knew it. Fiona had borrowed it from a woman at work, a woman 3 inches taller and 2 sizes smaller, and no amount of safety pins along the back seam had fixed the problem. The fabric bunched at her waist. The neckline kept sliding. She'd spent the first 20 minutes of the Harwick Foundation Gala standing near the far wall with her arms crossed. Not because she was cold, but because it was the only way to keep the whole thing from falling apart. She wasn't supposed to be here. That was the thing nobody said out loud, but everybody understood. The Harwick Foundation Gala was not a place for women who took the bus to work. It was not a place for women who brought their own lunch in a paper bag and kept a calculator app open on their phone during meetings because the firm hadn't given them a company device yet. It was a place for women like her stepsister Camille, who moved through a crowd the way water moves around stone, without effort, without doubt, without ever once looking down to check if her dress was staying up. Camille was laughing near the champagne table. She'd been laughing since they arrived. She laughed when the valet took the keys to their father's car. She laughed when the woman at the welcome desk paused over Fiona's name on the list, double-checking, running her finger down the paper twice. And she laughed now, leaning close to the man beside her. Some associate from the firm. Fiona couldn't remember his name, laughing at something he'd said while her diamond earrings caught the chandelier light and threw it back in every direction. Their father, Bernard, stood near the window talking to 2 men Fiona didn't recognize. His face had the careful, fixed quality of someone performing calmness. She knew that face. She'd grown up watching it across dinner tables whenever the subject of money came up. She knew why they were here. The firm's books were wrong. Not wrong in the way that numbers sometimes got transposed or columns misaligned, wrong in the way that suggested someone had been very deliberate about making them look right. Fiona had found it 3 weeks ago, buried in a set of quarterly reconciliations she'd been asked to review. She'd brought it to her supervisor. Her supervisor had gone pale and told her not to mention it to anyone. She'd brought it to the firm's senior accountant. He'd told her the same thing, then avoided her in the hallway for a week. Then her father had told her they were going to the Harwick Gala, together, as a family. She understood then that she was not here as a guest. She was here as a solution. The ballroom of the Callaway Hotel was the kind of room designed to make you feel small even if you weren't. 30-foot ceilings, marble floors so polished you could see your own reflection in them, slightly distorted like something seen through water. Long tables dressed in white linen. Flowers Fiona couldn't name, white and architectural, arranged in tall vases that probably cost more than her monthly rent. There were perhaps 300 people in this room. Politicians, developers, people whose names appeared on buildings. And somewhere in this crowd, she'd been told without being told, the way you understand things in families that don't speak plainly, somewhere was the man her father owed money to. Not just money, the kind of money that had a different name. She was reaching for a glass of water from a passing tray when Camille appeared at her elbow. "You have something on your dress," Camille said. Fiona looked down. There was nothing on her dress. "Just wanted to see if you'd look," Camille said, and laughed, and the man beside her laughed too, and Fiona felt the heat move up the back of her neck the way it always did, slow, unavoidable, humiliating. "Do you need to fix your seam?" Camille said, tilting her head. "It's pulling, at the back. People can see it." "Thank you," Fiona said in the voice she used when she didn't mean it. "I'm just trying to help." Camille's smile was perfect. Everything about Camille was perfect, had always been perfect. The way things are perfect when they've been maintained with tremendous effort disguised as effortlessness. "You know how these people are. First impressions." "I know how these people are," Fiona said. Camille looked at her for a moment, something sharpening behind her eyes. Then someone called her name from across the room and she turned and walked toward the sound and was gone, trailing perfume and laughter. Fiona stood where she was. She pressed her fingertips against the cold side of the water glass. She looked at her reflection in the marble floor. She looked like a woman who had made a mistake coming here. She was calculating the earliest she could reasonably leave. 30 minutes, maybe 45. Enough time for her father to introduce her to whoever he needed to introduce her to. Enough time to fulfill whatever function she was here to fulfill when the room changed. It wasn't loud. That was the strange thing. No doors opened dramatically. No announcement was made. But something shifted in the quality of the noise, the way a room goes slightly quieter when something enters it that the room recognizes as significant, and Fiona turned without knowing why she was turning, and she saw him. He came in through a side entrance near the east wall, unhurried, with two men behind him who were clearly not guests in the way the other guests were guests. He was in a dark suit, charcoal or black, she couldn't tell in this light. He was tall, not in the obvious, performative way some men are tall, but in the way that made the space around him look like it had been arranged to accommodate him. His hair was dark. His face was the kind of face that had seen things and decided what it thought about them. He was not young, not old, somewhere in the territory where a man has stopped trying to look like anything and simply is what he is. She felt, stupidly, the urge to straighten her dress. He moved through the room the way the room expected him to move, stopping briefly to acknowledge people. A nod here, a hand extended there, but his eyes were doing something else, something separate from the social mechanics of his body. His eyes were moving over the room with the particular attention of someone who had learned that the things worth noticing were never the obvious ones. She looked away. She looked back at her water glass. She became aware, a moment later, that the trajectory of his movement through the room had changed. She became aware of this because she felt it before she processed it. The way you sometimes sense someone looking at you, before you can confirm it. A subtle, groundless alertness that moved through her like current through water. She looked up. He was looking at her, not at Camille, who was 4 feet to her left and considerably more obvious, not at the women near the bar who had been watching him since he walked in, not at anyone else in the radius of her immediate vicinity. At her. His gaze was not warm. It wasn't flirtatious. Wasn't the appraising look men sometimes gave women at events like this. The look that was really a kind of pricing. It was the look of someone who had identified a specific thing in a crowded room and was now moving toward it with the economy of a man who did not waste motion. He was walking toward her. She had time to think, this is a mistake. He's looking at someone else. He'll veer off at the last moment. And then he didn't veer off, and he was standing in front of her, and the entire social geometry of the immediate area rearranged itself around the fact of his presence. Conversation stuttering, heads turning, Camille going absolutely still in a way Fiona had never seen Camille go still before. "You're not drinking," he said. His voice was low, not theatrical, just low and even, and the kind of voice that had learned there was no need to project. "I'm holding the glass," Fiona said. "That's close enough." Something shifted in his expression. Not a smile. "And Fiona Marsh," he said. It was not a question. She felt something cold move through her that had nothing to do with the water glass. "And you're," she started. "Aldric Vane," he said. She knew the name. She knew it the way you know the name of a weather system. Not because you looked it up, but because it kept appearing in things you were reading, tangential and ominous. A name that kept surfacing in financial documents and court records, and the margins of conversations held in lowered voices. She understood then precisely who her father owed money to. "I'm familiar with some of your accounts," she said, because it was what she had instead of anything else. "I know," he said. She looked at him. He looked at her. Around them, the party continued its murmur and glitter, and Fiona had the disorienting sense that she was standing inside a very small silence while the rest of the world moved at normal speed outside of it. "I'd like to speak with you," he said. "Not here. I'm not in the habit of going places I haven't agreed to go." "Then agree," he said, "and we'll discuss it on the way." There was something almost dry about the way he said it. Not a command. Something more precise than a command, because a command implied the possibility of refusal, and this had the quality of a door that had already been decided. She thought about her father near the window, wearing his careful face. She thought about 3 weeks of her supervisor looking through her in the hallway. She thought about the quarterly reconciliations and the numbers that were wrong in the particular way that meant someone very patient had made them that way. "All right," she said. She set the water glass down on the nearest surface. She followed him. She was aware, as they crossed the room, of the particular quality of the attention that followed them. Not hostile, not friendly, simply watchful, in the way of people who understood that something significant was occurring without being able to name exactly what it was. Camille's eyes found her as she passed. Camille's face had a look Fiona had never seen on it. Not anger, not envy exactly, but something closer to incomprehension, as though she were witnessing something that had violated the rules of a game she thought she'd memorized. Fiona didn't stop. She didn't smile. She walked past her stepsister in a borrowed dress with a broken seam, and she didn't look back. The room he brought her to was small, conference room or something like it. Table, chairs, a window overlooking the hotel's interior courtyard. One of his men stood outside the door. The other stayed near the wall like furniture. Vane set a folder on the table and sat down on the same side as she did, which surprised her. Not across from her, beside her, as though they were looking at the same problem from the same direction. "Your firm is laundering money for a state housing development board," he said. "Has been for 3.5 years. 4 senior partners know. Your father knew. 2 months ago, someone moved to cover the exposure by routing funds through a non-profit subsidiary, which happened to share an account custodian with a shell company that belongs to me." She was quiet for a moment. "They moved dirty money into your account," she said. "Dirty money with a significant paper trail leading backward to people I do not want to be associated with," he said. "Judges, a deputy secretary, men who smile in photographs, and you want it untangled. I want to know how deep it goes and how to surgically remove my name from any part of it." She looked at the folder. She looked at his hands on the table. She noticed, without meaning to, the scar along the back of his left hand, white and old, the kind that had been there long enough to become part of the geography of a person, rather than a story about them. "That's forensic accounting," she said. "That's months of work. I'm aware. I have a job. You had a job," he said calmly. "I spoke with the firm's lead partner this afternoon. You've been let go. Medical reasons officially. It happens." She stared at him. "You?" "I didn't arrange it," he said, with the flat certainty of someone who didn't feel the need to lie about the things he had done. "Your firm did. They knew you'd found it. This is what they do, but it means you're available." She should have been more frightened. She understood that. She was in a room with a man who had several documented connections to organizations that made people disappear when disappearing was convenient. And she was not afraid in the way she probably should have been. What she felt instead was a very specific anger, the kind that had been building for 3 weeks under layers of professional constraint, the kind that had nowhere to go, and was now going somewhere. "If I do this," she said, "what does my father owe you?" Vane looked at her. Not through her. At her. "Nothing," he said. "After. That's not precise enough. 70,000, he said. "Cleared. In exchange for 4 months of your time and complete access to my financial infrastructure. 4 months and full access to the books of a criminal enterprise," she said. "Yes, I'll need 6. He was quiet for a moment. 5, he said. "Done," she said. She didn't extend her hand. Neither did he. The agreement sat between them the way certain things sit, solid, settled, witnessed by nobody but the 2 people in the room. She looked at the folder, then she opened it. The numbers were a disaster. A beautiful, intricate, infuriating disaster. The kind that looked clean at the surface and was rotten underneath in ways that would take months to map. She recognized the architecture of it immediately, the way you recognize a handwriting style, and what she recognized was this. Whoever had built this had been very good. And they had made exactly one mistake. She found it in 40 minutes. She set her pen down. "There," she said, and pointed. Vane leaned forward slightly. He looked where she was pointing. She was aware of the proximity of him, the warmth of a person nearby in a cold room, the specific gravity of someone paying attention. "This custodian account," she said. "Every transaction above 80,000 routes through a transfer agent registered in Delaware. But these three? She pointed to a cluster of smaller figures. Don't. They route through the same agent but a different confirmation code. It's a second set of books inside the first set. Someone's been skimming. Not just laundering, skimming off the top. That's who moved money into your account, not the partners. Someone underneath them who thought your name would make a useful wall. Vane was very still. A name, he said. Not yet? She said. I'd need the confirmations database and 3 weeks. He looked at her for a long moment. You found that in 40 minutes, he said. The mess is always in the small numbers, she said. People who hide money always watch the big transactions. They get sloppy with the small ones because they think nobody's looking. He sat back. He looked at the folder, then back at her. She had the strange sensation of being measured, not for value exactly, but for something more specific, for what she actually was, rather than what she appeared to be. I'll have someone bring your things from the firm by morning, he said. I can get my own things. Your access card has already been revoked, he said, not unkindly, just as information. I had mine revoked once. It's faster to let someone else handle it. She looked at him. He looked at her. Do you always just tell people difficult things this plainly? She said. It saves time, he said, and I find that most people have already guessed the difficult thing and are simply waiting to be told. She thought about her supervisor's face 3 weeks ago, going white across the desk. She thought about the morning she'd walked into work, and her badge had beeped twice instead of once, and she told herself she was imagining it. Yes, she said. I suppose they have. She closed the folder. She placed it on the table between them, equidistant. A small, precise gesture that she hadn't consciously intended, but that felt, once made, exactly right. I'll need a secure workspace, she said, separate from wherever your regular operations are. If I'm going to trace this cleanly, I can't have people looking over my shoulder who have a stake in what I find. Agreed. And I'll need to verify my father's debt documentation myself. Before I start, he reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and set a single folded sheet of paper on the table in front of her without a word. She unfolded it. It was the note, her father's signature at the bottom, slightly unsteady in the way it had become in the last 2 years, the amount, the date. She folded it again and put it in her own pocket. I'll start Monday, she said. Tomorrow, he said. Tomorrow is Saturday. The people who built this didn't take weekends, he said. She considered that. 7 a.m., she said. 8, he said. I don't operate well before 8. It was such a mundane thing, so unexpectedly, specifically human, that she almost laughed. She didn't. But the near law was there, and she saw him notice that it was there, and something in his expression shifted in a way she couldn't fully name. She stood. He stood. He was taller than she remembered from across the ballroom, which didn't make rational sense, but was true. One more thing, she said. Yes, I want it in writing, she said. The terms, specific and complete. I'm an accountant. I don't work off verbal agreements. I'll have a document prepared tonight. I'll want a lawyer to review it. Of course, a lawyer I choose. He looked at her for a moment longer than the exchange required. Naturally, he said. She walked to the door. The man by the wall moved to open it before she reached it, which she hadn't expected. She stepped through it and out into the corridor, which felt cooler and brighter than the conference room, and she stood in it for a moment getting her bearings. The sounds of the gala filtered down the hall. Music, voices, the specific kind of laughter that rich rooms generate. She had just made an agreement with Aldric Vane. She had just made an agreement with the man her father had borrowed $70,000 from and not paid back. The man whose name appeared in financial documents like a recurring weather pattern. The man who had walked across a crowded ballroom and stopped in front of her, specifically, and she didn't know yet if that meant she was very fortunate or the opposite. She started walking back toward the ballroom. When she re-entered the room, Camille found her within 2 minutes. Camille had a very good radar for moments when something had shifted in Fiona's direction, and she always arrived quickly to assess the damage. "What was that about?" Camille said. She kept her voice light, conversational, but her eyes were doing something different. "Business," Fiona said. "Business." Camille said it like she was tasting the word and finding it unlikely. "What business do you have with Aldric Vane? The same business anyone has with him," Fiona said. "Numbers." Camille looked at her for a moment. Then she laughed. But it was a shorter laugh than usual, and it didn't reach all the way. "You should be careful," Camille said. "Men like that." "Men like what?" Fiona said. Camille didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have a way to finish it that wouldn't reveal something she'd rather not reveal. "Just be careful," she said, and walked away. Fiona watched her go. She thought Camille had been trying to warn her, or Camille had been trying to frighten her, and she wasn't entirely sure there was a difference, and she wasn't sure it mattered. She found her father near the window where she'd left him. He saw her coming and some complicated thing moved across his face. Relief, guilt, the particular expression of a man who has put someone else in front of a problem he couldn't solve himself and is not sure how to feel about having done it. "Fiona," he said. "It's handled," she said. He looked at her. His eyes were tired in a way she'd stopped letting herself notice years ago. "What did he?" "It's handled," she said again. "I'll tell you the details later. Not here." He nodded. He looked down at his drink. She stood beside him for a moment, looking out at the ballroom, the chandelier light, the white flowers, the 300 people in their perfect clothes. She thought about the folder, the numbers inside it, the single wrong confirmation code that had cracked the whole architecture open in 40 minutes. She thought about Vane sitting beside her at that table, not across from her, looking at the same problem from the same direction. She thought, 5 months. It wasn't long, and it was very long, and she had no idea what it would make her by the end of it. But the numbers were wrong, and she was the one who could find out why. And that was, at the end of everything, the only thing she had ever needed in order to begin. She set her empty water glass on the ledge and turned away from the window. Somewhere across the ballroom, she could feel, without looking, without any evidence she could name, that Aldric Vane already knew exactly what she'd decided, and was not surprised, and was already thinking 3 moves ahead. She decided quietly that she would need to think 4.